I didn't wake up that morning thinking I'd be part of a story anyone would tell on YouTube. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hunting for confrontation. I just wanted a quiet table, bad coffee, and a little space to think before the day started. And 3 sentences in. That's the truth. Because the moment a uniform stopped next to my table and said, "Stand up. I need your ID," I knew this was about to go somewhere it never should have gone. Yeah, that happened. It was a weekday morning downtown, the kind of cafe where people don't look at each other much. Laptops open, headphones and soft music, security cameras right there in plain sight. 2 blocks from the courthouse, the safest looking place you can imagine. And I was sitting by the window with my phone on the table, coffee, cooling hands visible, just existing like anyone else, you know what I mean? I didn't even notice him walk in at first. I noticed the room change before I noticed him, that quiet, tightening feeling, the kind you only learn after it's happened to you a few times. He didn't say hello, didn't explain why he was there, just stood close enough that my chair couldn't slide back and repeated it louder this time. "Stand up. I need your identification." I looked up at him, took a breath, and asked the simplest question a person can ask in that moment. "What's the legal reason you're asking for my ID?" And you could see it on his face like I'd flipped a switch he didn't expect anyone to touch. "I'm not going back and forth with you," he said. "You're acting suspicious." That word again. Suspicious, the most flexible word in the book. It can mean anything if you don't have to explain it. And I glanced around the cafe, people typing, sipping coffee, nobody calling for help, nobody looking relieved that an officer had arrived, just confused faces and one manager behind the counter watching closely. I kept my voice calm, not because I wasn't bothered, but because I've learned that calm scares people who are trying to control the situation. I asked, "Am I being detained, or am I free to leave?" He didn't answer, just repeated the demand, took another half step closer, crowding the table. And that's when it stopped feeling like a conversation and started feeling like pressure. The manager stepped closer and said, steady and professional, "Officer, he's a customer. We didn't call the police." That should have ended it right there, but instead he waved her off like she was interrupting something important, kept his focus on me, and told me again to stand up. I asked for a supervisor. He ignored that too. Here's the part. Nobody there knew, and the part I made sure stayed that way. I wasn't just some guy who didn't understand how these encounters work. I'd spent years on the other side of these stories, watching footage, reading reports, seeing how small choices turn into big violations. And I also knew something else. The cleanest accountability cases are the ones where the officer can't say you got special treatment, so I didn't tell him who I was. I just sat there and let him keep making choices. He called for backup, and you could hear how he framed it, like I was the problem, like something dangerous was happening. And when the second officer arrived, I saw it in his body language right away. He looked around, saw a calm-seated man, a cafe full of witnesses, cameras everywhere, and hesitated just long enough to tell me he wasn't buying the story he'd been told. The first officer didn't like that hesitation, and that's when things moved fast. Hands on me, sudden talk of resisting, even though my hands never left the table, voices rising, chairs scraping, people standing up to watch. And then finally a supervisor came in and shut it down before it went further, told everyone to step back, told me I was free to go, no apology, no explanation, just like flipping a switch and pretending none of it happened. Most people would have gone home angry, maybe shaken, maybe laughing it off, maybe posting a clip online. I didn't do any of that. That afternoon, I sat down and wrote everything out while it was still fresh. Times words, movements, when the justification changed, when the tone shifted, when the camera angle got worse, all of it. And then I filed a complaint the same way anyone else would through the public intake. And I asked for everything. Body cam dispatch, audio logs, the full window, not just the convenient parts. I also disclosed internally who I was, and then I did something that surprised a few people. I recused myself completely in writing, no involvement, no influence, just process clean and boring and impossible to twist. And from there it stopped being about me. Pretty quickly. The footage didn't match the report. The cafe cameras showed the approach, the lack of explanation, the manager contradicting the story in real time, the calm posture that somehow turned into resisting on paper, and when they checked the body cam logs, there were questions, access that didn't follow normal procedure, things that don't prove anything by themselves, but they point you in a direction. So they looked back, not just at this stop, but at others. Same officer, same area, same language, suspicious behavior, match description, consent, search over and over, high number of stops, low number of actual charges, video issues at the exact moments that mattered. And that's when it became clear this wasn't one bad decision, it was a method. Then the worst possible thing happened for him. While under investigation, ordered not to touch anything related to the case, he tried to access the files anyway. Systems don't argue, they don't get emotional, they just log quietly and permanently. And that one action turned a bad stop into something much bigger. After that, everything moved fast. He was fired, the unit he worked in was dismantled, supervisors were pulled into review, and federal investigators stepped in, not because anyone was loud, but because the evidence was calm, organized, and undeniable. In court, nobody needed speeches, they just played the videos side by side, let the jury watch the story change in real time. Let them hear the justifications fall apart. Let them see how suspicious turns into nothing when you slow it down and actually look. And when the sentence came down, it shocked a lot of people. 15 years. Not a warning, not early retirement prison, because the judge didn't see paperwork. Mistakes, he saw abuse of authority backed by lies aimed at people who were easy to target until the wrong person sat at the wrong table on the wrong day with cameras everywhere. I never raised my voice in that cafe, never told him who I was, never tried to embarrass anyone in public. I didn't have to. I let the system record its own failure. And here's the part I want you to think about. If you were sitting there that day, what would you have done? Would you have complied and hoped it ended quickly? Would you have argued? Would you have recorded? Or would you have walked out and prayed it didn't follow you home? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because these stories aren't about one officer or one person. They're about power, accountability, and what happens when someone finally says quietly, "I'm not going to let this slide." And if you've seen something like this in your own city, share it. And if you believe accountability matters, like, subscribe, and stay with us for more stories where the record actually tells the truth.